The country's top economic officials are back on Capitol Hill today. They're talking about the administration's plan to turn the economy around, and it looks like Wall Street is giving it 2 thumbs up from yesterday.
It does. They seem to like the plan to cleanse the banking system of its bad assets. The Dow had its biggest rally since November. John Jessup has the story from Washington.
When Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner and Fed Chairman Bernake appear on Capitol Hill, they go in armed with Monday's 500-point gain on the Dow, signaling a sign of approval for the administration's new plan to spark lending.
We believe that this is one more element that is going to be absolutely critical in getting credit flowing again. It's not going to happen overnight.
But they also go in trying to convince lawmakers to sign off on broad, sweeping changes that would give the government more oversight over financial firms. The Obama administration says they're needed to make sure failures at big firms like AIG and Bear Stearns don't happen again. But the new authority must first be approved by lawmakers in Congress, a tough audience, especially after AIG accepted more than $180 billion of taxpayer funds and used some of that money to pay executives over $200 million in bonuses. At least 15 execs have returned the money, but only after public outrage drove the House to pass a measure to tax up to 90% of their bonus pay. But it doesn't look like the Senate is going to pass that tax, and the White House doesn't seem to support it either.
Obviously, you don't want the government prescribing detailed sets of requirements for the design of compensation practices. On the other hand, you need to have a better set of broad standards in place that can help complement risk management requirements.
The new Treasury plan to get toxic assets off the balance sheets of banks is getting support from Wall Street and from some key Republicans.
I think it's a genuine effort to try to stabilize the financial industry, and it's part of an overall plan, and let's hope it works.
But the White House also faces another challenge, trying to win public support for the administration's rescue plan at a time when public approval for banks and financial firms is low.
There can be a tension between Wall Street and Main Street, but I think the president was clear that we're all in this boat together.
Today's discussion about reforms don't end here. Secretary Geithner is scheduled to appear on Capitol Hill again later this week, and President Obama will assure foreign leaders that his administration is on top of economic reforms at next week's summit for the Group of 20 industrial and developing nations. John Jessup, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, John. You know, Terry, they've got to stop beating up, though, on Wall Street. You can't, on one hand, say, please come in and help us, and on the other hand, say you're a bunch of scoundrels. They've got to, get their signals right. But this is the first time people have gone at the root of the problem of these toxic assets. They've got to be dispersed somehow and taken off the balance sheet of banks. And we've waited a year or two to get that done. The Bush administration should have done it right off the bat, but they didn't. And so this is a plan, and Wall Street's applauding it because it makes some sense. We just hope and pray that it works out. But they've got to, if they guarantee private purchase of these assets, then the chances are the big money guys will step forward and buy them. And if that happens, it cleans off the balance sheet of banks, and banks will breathe a sigh of relief and begin lending again.
So you'll see the result of whether this is going to work or not fairly quickly?
You should, absolutely. But they've got to stop the rhetoric of saying these are scoundrels and of course, kill that stupidity coming out of the House of Representatives. That just can't be done. All right, Lee Webb has the rest of our top stories from the CBN newsroom. Lee?
The governor of China's central bank says the U.S. dollar should be replaced with a new international currency. Russia offered a similar plan earlier this month. Both countries suggest that the International Monetary Fund could issue the new currency. China and other countries worry that the U.S. could face inflation, which would devalue the dollar. So China's investments in U.S. dollars would be devalued as well. Analysts say replacing the dollar, though, would be difficult, since it's the most widely held currency in the world. Pat, I can't imagine this happening, at least not anytime soon, but is this just the beginning of the drumbeat?
No, it's going to happen. It's no question it's going to happen. The United States has lost its position as the preeminent financial power in the world. What has happened through all this, I mean, we loaded the world down with this mess, and it should have been cleared by our rating agencies. They gave it AAA rating, and so we sold them to the Brits and the Chinese and the Kuwaitis and all these other people all over the world. Now, if we inflate our currency, which we're doing, we'll begin to have fiat currency, which isn't worth very much. But of all the people, the IMF can't do anything right. So I think that would be a tragedy to put it in their hands. But indeed, the preeminence of the United States as the leading economic power in the world has been tarnished, and we will not regain it in our lifetime. We lost it. And so the dollar shortly will no longer be the world's reserve currency. How fast they get it done, it remains to be seen. But they'll probably go to something based on commodities or based on gold or a basket of commodities or something. But the Chinese have every reason to say, we're holding $1 trillion and we don't like this very much, what's happening to us. Lee?
The price of oil eased slightly to $53 today after hitting a high of $54 on Monday. Oil has been moving higher since hitting a low of $37 a little more than a month ago. Meanwhile, prices at the pump have fallen slightly over the past 2 weeks. The average national price of unleaded gas is now $1.95 a gallon. But you may want to fill up soon. Gas prices are expected to start climbing again. Vermont's state Senate has overwhelmingly approved a measure that would legalize same-sex marriage. That makes Vermont the first state in the nation to take legislative rather than judicial steps to allow gay marriage. If the bill makes it through the Vermont State House and becomes law, it would replace Vermont's first in the nation civil unions law. Republican Governor Jim Douglas opposes gay marriage, but he hasn't indicated if he would veto the measure. Washington State is on course to pass a bill that would give same-sex partnerships the same rights as married couples. Thousands rallied on the steps of the Washington State Capitol to protest the bill. Washington already has laws in place giving rights to domestic partnerships. This bill would expand those to include all benefits given to married couples. Employment benefits like pensions and health insurance would be affected by the new legislation. The Washington Values Alliance believes the bill, though, is just a stepping stone for redefining marriage.
By creating the legal equivalent of the marital union itself, and thus likely subjecting Washington State to litigation by homosexual partners demanding that the courts overturn our state's Defense of Marriage Act, which is exactly what happened in California prior to Proposition 8. We're not going to let that happen here, are we?
The bill passed the Washington State Senate last week and now moves to the House, which started public hearings Monday. A federal judge in New York is ordering the Food and Drug Administration to allow 17-year-olds to use the Plan B morning after pill without a prescription. Judge Edward Corman, a Reagan appointee, says the FDA has repeatedly and unreasonably delayed making a decision on Plan B, allowing politics to cloud its judgment. But the Conservative Family Research Council says the ruling jeopardizes girls' health and the ability of their parents to care for them. A council spokesman says the judge is accepting, quote, a political ideology promoting sexual license for teens. The FDA is reviewing the judge's decision. Feminist groups say it's unlikely the Obama administration will appeal it, though. 2 new studies report that red meat can cause serious health risks. One by the National Cancer Institute says older people eating large amounts of red and processed meats face a greater risk of death from heart disease and cancer. The other study finds that eating 10 portions or more a week can increase the risk for blindness by nearly half as you get older. The report was published in the American Journal of Epidemiology, and it adds that eating chicken at least 3 times a week can cut the risk of blindness by more than half. But getting back to that portion, 10 portions of red meat, that's a lot per week, Pat.
Well, it's a whole lot. We've been talking about this for a long time, and I know the cattlemen are not happy with what I have to say, but the truth is that red meat, marbled beef, the kind we get in our fine restaurants, is just loaded with the cholesterol-forming substances that block our arteries and bring on heart conditions. And the reason this blindness thing is on the forefront is that if it blocks up the arteries going into the heart, there may be some kind of lesions which would result in blindness. So that's what they're talking about. But I tell you, it's not worth it. It really isn't worth it. There's nothing wrong with chicken, and chicken has all the benefits of beef without the risk.
That's quite a statistic, isn't it? 4 times?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, I'm a man. I'm a red-blooded, meat-eating, give me a raw steak sort of thing. You know?
I know you are.
Yeah, sure. But I'm a chicken, I guess.
Massachusetts Representative Barney Frank says Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia is a, quote, homophobe. Frank made his remarks in an interview with a gay news website. He says he doesn't want the issue of gay marriage to go before the Supreme Court now because that, quote, homophobe Antonin Scalia has too many votes. Scalia has complained that judges should not be taking on moral issues. He says elected officials should decide them. The University of Notre Dame is sticking with its invitation to President Obama to speak at its graduation commencement in May. The invite hasn't been without criticism, though. Some Roman Catholics say the president's views on abortion and stem cell research counter Catholic teachings. More than 33,000 people have signed a petition to withdraw the invitation, but a Notre Dame spokesman says that's unlikely. You can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbn.com.